People used to whisper when she passed by. She talks to birds, you know. I heard she hasn't spoken to a human in years. Did you see her? Barefoot again. Just standing in the field, arms out like a scarecrow. Her name was Elena Ward, and I met her when I moved back to my hometown after nearly a decade away. I had just left a messy divorce, a failed business, and a city that had chewed me up and spit me out. I wasn't looking for drama, I just wanted quiet. Peace. Instead, I found the strangest girl I'd ever seen, and the most unforgettable story I've ever lived. The first time I saw her, she was standing in the clearing behind the old limestone church, staring up at the trees like she was waiting for something. A dozen blackbirds circled above her, silent. Watching. She was in her late 20s, long dark hair braided with little feathers, barefoot, and wearing an oversized sweater that hung off one shoulder. Her expression was so calm, yet so focused. Like she was having a conversation no one else could hear. "Are you okay?" I asked, stepping closer. She looked at me and smiled, but didn't say a word. Then a bird, a tiny robin, fluttered down and landed on her hand. She whispered something in its direction, too soft to hear. The bird chirped once and flew off into the trees. I laughed, awkward and unsure. "You train them or something?" "No," she said simply. "We talk." That was the first time I heard her voice. It was soft, kind, and oddly soothing. I thought maybe she was joking. Or maybe she was a little off. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who thought that. The townspeople had all sorts of stories about Elena. That she had a breakdown after her parents died in a car crash. That she ran away and lived in the forest for a year. That she didn't go to school, didn't work, didn't own a phone. That she once screamed so loudly during a thunderstorm, the entire bird population left town for a week. "She's harmless," said my neighbor June. "But stay away. She's different." Different didn't scare me. What scared me was how normal everyone else seemed, pretending nothing strange had ever happened here. So I talked to Elena again. And again. And over time, she started opening up to me. Her house was on the edge of the forest, tucked between the trees like it was hiding. Inside, it smelled like pine and lavender. No electricity. Just candles, books, and dried herbs hanging from every rafter. Bird feathers lined the windowsills like trophies. One evening, I asked her, "Why birds?" She didn't hesitate. "Because they listen. And they see what others don't." She told me things no one else could have known. Where I had grown up. What my father used to say when he was drunk. That I still carried guilt over something I never told my ex-wife. "How do you know that?" I asked, shaken. She pointed to the crow on the window ledge. "They told me." I wanted to laugh, but the part of me that still believed in logic was losing the argument. I had no explanation. And over the next few weeks, more things started happening. Birds following me on walks. Elena showing up at the exact moment I needed someone. Messages, written in twigs or feathers, left outside my door. Then came the night of the storm. Lightning lit up the sky like a battlefield. The winds howled. And from my bedroom window, I saw Elena, outside, in the rain, arms lifted toward the sky, screaming. Not in fear. Not in pain. But in some kind of command. Within seconds, hundreds, no, thousands, of birds filled the sky. Swarming. Spiraling. Diving toward something I couldn't see. And that's when I realized, she wasn't crazy. She was warning us. And we didn't listen. After the storm, I couldn't sleep. The sky had quieted, but something had changed. The air was heavier. Like the forest was holding its breath. I kept thinking about Elena, her arms raised to the clouds, the birds swarming in the storm like a living shield. And her scream, it wasn't just a cry into the wind. It was a command, or maybe a plea. I didn't know which. But I needed answers. I went back the next morning. She was sitting on her porch, wet hair braided loosely over one shoulder, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept either. "I saw you last night," I said. She didn't look surprised. "They listen better in storms." "Elena, what is it you're not telling me?" She looked up at me then, and for the first time since we met, I saw fear in her eyes. "Not of me. But of something else. Not everything wants to be heard," she whispered. That's when she told me about the birds that didn't sing. The ones that only came when something was wrong. The silent ones, she called them. Black, sharp-winged things with red eyes. They didn't flutter or call, they just watched. Perched in trees. On rooftops. In shadows. "They don't come for beauty," she said. "They come for death." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "You're saying birds can see death." "I'm saying they see what's coming. And sometimes, they try to stop it." It sounded insane. But I couldn't shake the image of the night before. Hundreds of birds diving toward the old woods behind her home. And Elena, screaming like something was already gone. We didn't talk much after that. But I started noticing things. A neighbor's dog disappeared. Elena left herbs on their porch the next day. A boy went missing for a few hours in the forest. He was found asleep under a tree, surrounded by feathers. And then, there was the letter. Stuffed in my mailbox, no name on it. Just one sentence, scrawled in looping cursive, "You've been followed." I didn't show it to anyone. Not even Elena. Instead, I watched. I started waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of birds tapping at my window. Not pecking, tapping, like they were trying to warn me. I told myself it was stress. The divorce. Moving back here. But the feeling didn't leave. One day, I brought Elena an old photo album. "I want to show you something," I said. She flipped through pictures of me as a kid. Me and my dad fishing. My mom in the garden. A photo of me at 7, holding a dead bird in my hands, crying. She paused on that one. "This one," she said softly. "They remember this." "What do you mean?" "They were trying to speak to you even then." I didn't understand. But something clicked. My mom used to say I had an imaginary friend named Piper. I swore he was a crow. She thought it was cute. I told her the crow told me secrets about people. Secrets I shouldn't have known. And then, when I was 9, he disappeared. I never saw him again. Until last night. Because one of the birds that flew past my window during the storm, its wing had the same gray streak I remembered. The same one I used to draw over and over again as a child. "Elena," I whispered. "What's happening to me?" She took a deep breath. "They've chosen you." "Chosen me for what?" Her eyes darkened. "To carry what I can't." I couldn't stop thinking about what Elena said, "They've chosen you." What did that mean? Why now? What was I supposed to carry? The questions clung to me like fog, and each day brought more signs, more things I couldn't explain. The blackbird started following me everywhere. To the grocery store. The gas station. Perched outside my window in the morning. Watching. And I started dreaming. Not like normal dreams, these were vivid, disjointed, too real. I saw people I didn't know crying in firelight. Birds circling a hospital roof. A girl running barefoot through a field at night, screaming a name I couldn't quite hear. When I told Elena, she didn't flinch. "They're showing you possibilities," she said. Possibilities of what? Of what could be. Of what might still be stopped. Stopped from what? She looked away. The others don't care about stopping. I pressed her. Others? There are more like me, she admitted. Or, there used to be. She told me about the listeners, people who could understand birds the way musicians read sheet music. Some healed. Some warned. Others disappeared. They were hunted, she said. Because people fear what they don't understand. And because some of them used the gift, selfishly. Like how? She hesitated. There was a woman. Years ago. She controlled crows. Used them to blackmail people. Spied. Stole. She brought death, not protection. And when they found her, her voice caught. They burned her house to the ground. With her inside. A chill ran through me. So why would the birds choose me? Because I'm not enough anymore, Elena said quietly. They know something's coming. I've seen it in the sky. What is? She closed her eyes. A silence. A devouring silence. No birds. No voices. Just absence. That word, absence, echoed in my mind long after I left. That same night, I went to visit my sister, Anna. She lived across town and hadn't seen Elena in years. I told her the basics, about the birds, the dreams, what Elena could do. Anna didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. Instead, she said something I didn't expect: Mom used to talk to them too. I froze. She'd sit in the yard with her hands out, Anna said. Birds would land on her arms like it was nothing. I thought she was just gentle. But I remember, once, when I was really sick, a whole group of finches came and sat on the windowsill. She said they were watching over me. Why hadn't I remembered that? I searched through our mother's old things the next day. In a worn leather journal, I found notes, drawings of birds, strange markings, phrases like, not just messengers, guardians, and, don't open the gate without the sign. The sign. That night, the dreams returned. But this time, I recognized the girl running barefoot. It was Elena, much younger, maybe 16. She was crying, blood on her hands. Behind her, black birds flew wildly, and something darker followed. Something without wings. I jolted awake, heart pounding. My phone buzzed. It was a text. From a number I didn't know. She lied. I rushed to Elena's cabin, but she wasn't there. The door was open. Birds perched nervously nearby, not making a sound. On the floor was a single white feather. And a torn page from a journal. My mother's handwriting. If they choose more than one, it means the danger is already here. I stood in the doorway, shaking. Elena was gone. The forest was silent. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I was supposed to trust anymore. The forest no longer felt alive. No rustling. No chirping. The trees seemed to be holding their breath, and I could feel that same pressure building inside me like something just beneath the surface waiting to explode. Elena was still missing. 3 days had passed since I found her cabin empty. I filed a report. I called every contact she had scribbled in the back of that journal. Nothing. I even left birdseed on her windowsill, desperate for some kind of message. On the fourth night, I was woken by tapping on my window. I threw the curtains open. A raven sat there. Just one. Its eyes locked on mine, unblinking. I opened the window, and it didn't fly away. It dropped something onto the sill, an old, rusted key. And a scrap of cloth. It was torn from Elena's scarf. The raven took off into the night sky. I grabbed my coat and flashlight and followed it. Through the field. Down past the stream. Into the woods. My breath fogged in the air even though it wasn't cold. I didn't even question where I was going, it was like my body knew. The path narrowed. The trees grew denser. Finally, the raven landed on a twisted wooden gate, half buried in overgrowth, like it hadn't been touched in years. I used the key. It creaked open. What lay beyond was something I never expected. A small clearing. Stone markers. Dozens of them. Each one etched with bird symbols. I realized then, it wasn't a graveyard for people. It was for listeners. And then I heard it. Sobbing. I turned. Elena. She sat at the center of the clearing, knees pulled to her chest, her hair tangled, eyes swollen. Elena. I rushed over, but she flinched. You weren't supposed to follow, she whispered. You shouldn't be here. I had to find you, what's going on? She shook her head. It's starting. You can feel it, can't you? The silence. I nodded slowly. Why didn't you tell me everything? Her voice cracked. Because I was afraid. Because you reminded me of her. Who? My sister, she said, her gaze distant. She was chosen too. But she wasn't strong enough. She tried to stop it, and she died. What is it, Elena? She looked up at me, eyes full of terror. The devourer. The one who silences. And that's when I heard it, no, felt it. A pulse. Low. Distant. Like a heartbeat beneath the earth. The birds above us stirred, agitated. Dozens began to gather in the trees, watching. One by one. All silent. Elena, I whispered. We're not alone. She stood slowly. They've come to witness. To witness what? She looked at me and said something I'll never forget, the moment everything ends, or everything begins again. The wind picked up suddenly, but the trees didn't move. My flashlight flickered. Then died. The ground trembled beneath our feet. And in the clearing center, just beyond the stone markers, the earth began to shift. A crack opened. Wide. Black. Endless. Elena grabbed my arm. It's waking up. I stared into that darkness, heart pounding in my chest. And for the first time, I truly understood what she meant. The silence wasn't just the absence of sound. It was a force. And it wanted to consume everything. The crack in the earth widened like it was breathing, alive in a way no land should be. I stood frozen as the void pulsed, drawing in sound, light, warmth. The birds above didn't move, didn't make a sound. Dozens of them. Silent witnesses. Watchers. Elena, I said again, voice shaking, what is that thing? Her hand trembled in mine. The silence. It's older than language. Older than memory. It comes when the world forgets how to listen. We took a step back as the ground crumbled at the edges. Elena's eyes locked on the swirling darkness, her jaw clenched. "I thought I could stop it," she whispered. "I thought if I disappeared, I'd be the last one." "What do you mean last one?" She turned to me, eyes brimming. "There were others. Other listeners. My sister. My mother. And you, what?" She looked down. "You were born with the mark. That birthmark on your wrist. It's not just a mark. It's the seal of voice." I pulled up my sleeve instinctively. The faint swirl-like shape had always seemed like a coincidence, a quirk of genetics. But now, under the moonlight, it glowed faintly. "Elena," I breathed. "What does that mean?" Her eyes didn't leave mine. "It means you were never just the outsider who stumbled into this. You're part of this story, even if you never knew it. You're the only one who can speak the name." "What name?" "The true name of the silence. If spoken out loud by a listener, it can seal it back underground." The ground shook again. Stones tumbled. Birds launched from the trees, circling above in frenzied patterns. "I don't know the name," I choked. "Yes, you do. You've known it your whole life, you just don't remember." She placed her hands on either side of my face. "Think back. Your dreams. The nightmares. The voice whispering at the edge of sleep. You've heard it before, haven't you?" I didn't want to admit it. But yes. Ever since I was a child. A voice in my dreams, whispering syllables I never understood but could never forget. That same voice returned now, in the pit of my stomach, the back of my skull. And then the twist snapped into place. "Elena," I said slowly. "You already tried. Didn't you?" Her face froze. "You tried to say the name once. That's why you vanished." She looked down. "I wasn't strong enough. You're the reason it's waking up." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was trying to protect you." My breath caught. "By hiding the truth from me?" "You were just a child, I'm not anymore." The earth roared beneath us. A shadow began to rise from the pit, indistinct, shifting, a blackness that seemed to bleed into reality itself. The trees groaned. The birds scattered. And then I saw something I'll never forget. At the edge of the void, a figure. Human. A girl. Pale. Still. "Is that?" I whispered. Elena followed my gaze. Her body crumpled. My sister. The figure, no older than 15, stood unmoving. Her lips were parted slightly, as if caught in a moment of speech. Her skin was stone. A statue. She spoke the name, Elena said, barely audible. She tried. And it took her voice. Then her body. And trapped her here. As a warning. The birds began to cry now, soft at first, then louder, echoing through the forest. "Elena," I said slowly, "what happens if I speak it now?" Her voice cracked. "One of two things. You seal it away, or it seals you." I stared at the void. The pulse inside my head grew louder. The name, it was there. Just below the surface. Then let's finish what she started. The wind howled through the trees like a warning from the forest itself. The shadow rising from the pit was no longer abstract. It had shape, humanoid, but wrong. Shifting, flickering, like a memory trying to take form. It stood taller than the trees now, its face a swirl of darkness with no eyes, only a deep, endless void that seemed to absorb every sound and color around it. Elena clutched my hand like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. Her voice was barely audible, but it carried the weight of every mistake, every secret. You have to say the name now. Before it finds her again. She pointed to the frozen girl at the edge of the chasm, her sister, turned to stone, her lips parted in a silent scream. The figure hadn't moved since we'd seen her, but something told me that wouldn't last. The silence was hunting her, or maybe using her. My heart pounded as if trying to break through my chest. The name pulsed in my mind like a forgotten melody, terrible and beautiful. I didn't know how I knew it. But I knew it. It had been waiting in me all along. I stepped closer to the edge. The ground cracked, and Elena gasped. "Stop," she cried. "Don't go any closer." But I had to. I needed the silence to hear me clearly. To know I wasn't afraid. The birds overhead didn't flee now. They circled, no longer in panic, but in harmony, as if they knew what was coming. As if they were waiting, too. The shadow's head turned toward me. That eyeless face locked on mine. It was listening. And then, I spoke. The name came out in a voice that didn't sound like mine. Deeper. Resonant. Not just from my mouth, but from the air, the trees, the birds. As if nature itself had been holding its breath for this moment. At first, nothing happened. Then, the earth shook violently. The pit roared like a collapsing universe, and the shadow reeled back, as if struck by lightning. The birds screamed in unison, diving toward the darkness in sharp, synchronized patterns. Light erupted from my wrist, the mark glowing white-hot. Elena screamed my name. The shadow lunged. And suddenly, it was gone. Sucked downward, howling in fury and pain, clawing at the air as if trying to drag something, or someone, down with it. Me. The ground beneath my feet cracked again, and this time I was falling. The pit opened wide and I slipped. For one terrifying moment, I saw nothing but darkness and felt its pull. Cold, hungry. A hand shot out. Elena. She had thrown herself to the edge, catching my wrist with both hands. Her grip was failing, but her eyes burned with defiance. "You're not going anywhere," she hissed. "Not like the others." With one final pull, she dragged me back up. We collapsed on the forest floor, gasping. The pit was gone. Sealed. The girl, Elena's sister, was gone too. "Elena," I whispered. She turned her face away. "She's free now." I felt it. When the name was spoken, she was released. Silence returned to the forest, but this time it felt peaceful. Elena wiped her eyes. "You did what none of us could. You remembered." I looked at my wrist. The mark had faded. "I think it was never about power," I said. "It was about remembering who we are. Listening. And choosing not to be afraid." She nodded. "That's what being a listener means." We stood together as the birds landed all around us, on branches, on the forest floor, near our feet. They weren't afraid anymore. And for the first time, neither were we. After the forest fell still and the last echo of that monstrous scream faded into the earth, I didn't move for a long time. Neither did Elena. We just stood there, two people who had walked into something far bigger than ourselves, and somehow, walked out the other side. The birds, once wild and panicked, now sang soft, clear notes as they perched around us. Their song wasn't random anymore, it was communication. Peace. A hymn of release. Elena finally broke the silence. "I didn't think anyone else would ever understand this," not after what happened to my sister. Her voice cracked on the word sister. And I realized, for all the strength she'd shown, she'd been carrying a lifetime of pain. A promise unfulfilled. Until now. I turned to face her. You weren't meant to fight it alone. None of us are. She looked down at the glowing patch of earth where the pit had sealed shut, the grass already starting to grow back. I think that's why it chose you. The forest. The birds. The name. Elena, I said gently. You said I remembered the name, but I think the birds gave it to me. Or maybe I heard it because I finally listened. Not with fear. But with trust. She nodded. That's what being a listener really is. It's never been about magic or gifts. It's about respect. Surrender. Connection. And in that moment, I understood. The birds hadn't been warning us out of fear. They were trying to help. To guide. And we'd misjudged them, just like the world had misjudged Elena all her life. Back in the village, everything had changed. Elena wasn't seen as crazy anymore. People who had laughed at her, ignored her, whispered behind her back, now stopped and thanked her. Some apologized. Others just stood in awe as the birds landed near her feet without hesitation. She never demanded attention. She didn't gloat. She just smiled. Quiet. Content. As for me, I never saw the world the same again. I returned to my small apartment in the city, but something had shifted. Birds followed me now, sometimes perched outside my window. Sometimes chirping mid-walk, like little reminders that nature was always speaking. I just had to listen. I wrote a book. The Language of Wings. It told our story, Elena's, her sister's, and the one I thought I never had. It went viral. People from around the world wrote to me about their own strange connections to animals, dreams they couldn't explain, forests that felt alive. For once, the idea that the world was deeper than we imagined, wasn't so easily dismissed. A year later, I returned to the forest. Elena was still there, calmer, wiser. She had a garden now, right near the old cabin. Flowers bloomed where the pit once was. Her sister's favorite flowers. She didn't say how they'd grown so fast. She didn't have to. She pointed to the tree line. They're waiting for you. I smiled, walked toward the clearing, and the birds welcomed me home.